of the day to all. Today we will be discussing about hypothesis testing, as this is a precursor for more detailed topics that are follows as: what is hypothesis, why it is called as a hypothesis, what are the different things we are supposed to keep it in mind, how to do that, what are the different formulas, what are the different tests, what is population, what is sample, and how we do that. We all going to study all these topics in this. So, if the size of population, first of all I want to tell you what is a population. Population means a lot of people or a mass of people, of articles, or we can say a mass of some production which we want to take into consideration. So, if the size of population or the process of interest which I want to work on is very large, then to draw statistical inferences or the results about the unknown values of its parameter corresponds to sample statistics they are used. So, drawing conclusions about the population characteristics with the help of sample statistic is one of the application of statistical inferences in business. For example, if there is a soap manufacturing plant and every 10th soap, or we do not know whether it is 10th or which number, is being a bit defective as compared to the standards. So, we will use a statistical approach to find out as to what is the probability that how many soaps out of 100 lots are being defective. For example, to know the portion of units of production being manufactured that do not match the quality standards. Statistical inferences is the branch of statistics which is concerned with the using probability concepts to deal with uncertainty in decision making. We are using statistical inferences just to find out when we land on the result, the end result should be right, should be correct. The decision which we are making, that yes, we can use this process to make soaps, for example, this process, and this is the way every 10th soap or every 12th soap is defective. So, what process is supposed to be used, how we are supposed to make decisions, for that purposes we are using statistical inferences. It is referred, that means the statistical inferences, they are referred to as the process of selecting and using a sample statistics to draw inferences about a population parameter based on the subset of it, the population drawn from a population. For example, if this is my population of soap, this is population of soap. So, if for example, the manufacturing plant is manufacturing 50,000 soaps per day, I cannot test each and every soap. So, what happens is, I will take out a sample from here which is called as a subset. That is why we are writing, it is referred to as to draw inferences about the population parameter based on the subset of it which we are drawing from the population. So, if this is the whole population, a small part of it which we can study and which we want to study on, that is taken out, and that is called as the subset of this population. Now, statistical inferences, they are treated and they are studied under two problems. One is called as hypothesis and one is called as estimation. That means, either we can make a judgment on the basis of, like, if something is unknown, I am just drawing a conclusion that might be every 10th soap is defective. So, that is called as an estimation, because I am just estimating through my ideas, or might be through my experience I am estimating that might be, could be possible that every 5th soap or every nth soap is defective. But what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is, it includes the significance as to why we are studying it, and it tests the hypothesis about the parent population. That means, this population is also called as the parent population. So, in hypothesis we are also studying the parent population from which the sample is drawn, that means from which the subset is been drawn, and estimation is used for the statistical obtained from the sample as estimates of the unknown parameters of the population from which sample is drawn, and there are different techniques to study hypothesis as well as estimations. Now, What is hypothesis, how we do it, how we formulate hypothesis is something very important to study the further topics which are there in the unit. Any assumption, hypothesis is basically, this hypothesis is nothing but an assumption which we are making that might be. We are using if then statement when we talk about hypothesis. So, what happens? It is nothing but an assumption that the researcher make on the probable direction of the result that might be obtained on the completion of the research process is determined as hypothesis. For example, hypothesis is nothing but hypothesis is that if this is possible then, or if this is determined then. So, what happens is, it is nothing but a researcher makes an assumption that it could be one of the reason as to why there is some problem or why there is some defect or what we are supposed to find out. So, the researcher makes a assumption in the probable direction. That means, if for example, we say that smoke causes cancer. So, what in which direction we are supposed to move in is that smoke is one thing which might cause cancer. So, this is one assumption, we can say, a statement onto which we want to work on. A researcher is making this statement and he is supposed to move towards the probable direction of finding out as to how many people who smoke are suffering from cancer. So, this is one direction onto which he is supposed to work on. So, this is called as a probable direction of the result that might be obtained at the end of when the research is over. That is called as hypothesis. So, a hypothesis is written in such a way that it can be proved or disapproved. That means, if I am saying cigarette causes cancer, might be proved or might not be proved depending upon what kind of study I am doing, what sample I am using, which samples I am finding out and from where I am taking. So, this can be proved or disapproved, we can accept or we can reject as to what we were thinking is right or wrong depending upon valid and reliable data. For example, if we are saying the people smoke, that smoke causes cancer. So, we are supposed to take the reliable data. We are not talking about the people who are not smoking, but we are talking about the people who smoke, because the question talks about smoke causes cancer. So, we are talking about the people who smoke. So, the valid data says we are supposed to talk about the people who are smoking. So, this is the valid data as well as the reliable data. In order to obtain these data that we want to study on, so the hypothesis must be formulated in simple, clear and declarative form. Declarative here means it should be explanatory. When you read some line, it should be explanatory to yourself that yes, this problem is talking about this. So, it has to be very much self-explanatory that the hypothesis, the statement onto which we are finding out the problem, the statement of the population which we want to find out is very self-explanatory. It should not use any stats, it should not use any scientific language, but it's supposed to be very, very simple and very, very clear and very explanatory. So, a hypothesis has to be one dimensional. One dimensional, what is the meaning of one dimensional? Means we are supposed to find out only the relationship, one relationship, we are supposed to find out, test only one relationship between two different variables of the population at a time. We cannot talk about too many variables, we cannot find out about too many relationship about a population. We should to make the things very clear, to make the things very simple, to find out the exact accurate result, to find out a reliable result. We are supposed to test about only one relationship between two population, between two variables of a population, instead of talking about too many variables about the same population or too many relationship about the same population. So, what happens is, hypothesis is nothing but what it is. Hypothesis is a statement to be tested about true values of the population. We are supposed to find out what are these true values are. For example, taking the same example, if smoke causes cancer, then the true value is smoke is causing cancer. How? Why? That is what we are supposed to find out from the population. Seeing the population as to what could be the population responses to our question, what could be how the population, whether the population onto which we are studying is reliable or not. So, hypothesis is nothing but it is a a simple statement, a very simple, a very short and very precise and very explanatory, self-explanatory statement onto which we are supposed to study. So, they are using the parameters, we are using in order to study this, we are using the population parameters using the sample statistics. How many sample statistics? It talk about numbers, and numbers talk about quantity. We are talking about how many sample size, what should be the sample size. But here when we talk about hypothesis, we talk about large samples, as we have already discussed in slide number 1, to examine whether any significant difference exists or not between true values of the population parameters and the sample statistics. As to what we are studying, what we want to find out, is there any difference as to what we are studying and how it is being there already. So, we are supposed to find out the difference which exists or not between the true values of the population parameters and the sample statistics. So, a hypothesis is written in if then statement, as we write down if this is possible, or if it is not possible, then go to statement number this. In the same manner, hypothesis is also studied in the same manner. If this is there, then you are supposed to do this. So, if smoke is causing cancer, then please reduce the use of smoke, use of cigarette in your routine. So, we always write down, if we are studying a problem in hypothesis, a simple statement, then we are supposed to write it down. The statement has to be written in the form of if then statement. For example, if there is high organizational commitment, then this will lead to lower turnover in tension. See, if we are using if and then, the hypothesis is nothing, it is a simple statement which we want to study and we want to find out the results of. For example, if there is a higher organizational commitment, if I am working in an organization and my organizational commitment towards the organization is very high, then why I will think of leaving the organization. So, the people who have higher organizational commitment, they will not lead to turnover, this will not lead to turnover. So, if the higher organizational commitment is there in among the employees, then there will be low turnover in the organization. Second example, they talk about if the employees are healthy, if the people who are working in an organization are very healthy, obviously they will not take sick leaves. So, if the employees are healthy in the organization, then they may not take sick leaves as frequently as they do. Third example, if the inflation rate decreases, if the inflation rate decreases, then the wholesale price will also decrease. The wholesale price of the commodity, wholesale price index of the commodities will also decrease. These are few examples of hypothesis. As to what is hypothesis means, how it is written. But a hypothesis must be measurable and quantifiable. That means it has to be in quantity, it should not be in quality. It has to be quantity, it should be quantifiable. That means it has to be measured in numbers. So, we talk about numbers when we talk about hypothesis. So, a hypothesis which we want to study should be measurable and should give us some numbers, so that a statistical authenticity of the relationship can be estimated. That means, the relationship here is the employees are healthy and the sick leave. That means, if my employees are healthy, the relationship between being healthy and taking sick leaves. So, if I have some measurable data, if I have some mathematical, if I have some statistical data with me, so this comparison between healthy and sick leaves can be studied more deeply. If I have the data about higher organizational commitment, as to what could be the data showing me, and lower turnover and the organizational commitment, if I have the quantity data, if I have a quantifiable data, then I can just make the comparison of the two and then I can find out as to what the hypothesis is talking about, what my statement is talking about, whether I am going the right direction or whether I am going into the wrong direction. So, a hypothesis must be measurable and should be quantifiable, along with if it is quantifiable, then only the relationship can be estimated or can be established in an authentic manner, in a very authentic manner onto which we can rely on. And along with this, hypothesis is nothing but a statement based on the existing literature. What are literature? Literature means the past studies. Literature means the same topic is being studied by n number of people. So, what they have talked about on that topic. So, literature is nothing but literature is a secondary study. If I want to gain knowledge on the same topic, I will go to the studies or the research that has already been done in the past, and I can have the relevant information out of that. So, hypothesis is nothing but what it is? It is the knowledge, or we can say it is the statement based on the past knowledge, or we can say existing literature which we have and the theories about the topic, and is based on the gut feeling. What feeling I have, whether I should go for this hypothesis, whether I go for that statement, whether I should make this statement, whether I should make this judgment. So, it is something related to the gut feeling of the researcher as well, because this researcher is no one but this researcher is an expertise in that field. So, his gut feeling or her gut feeling is also very strong on that statement onto which he wants to study or she wants to study. So, the researcher here is very important, and along with it what or he or she is studying and what that topic or the hypothesis statement has literature related to that statement, what literature we have, what past studies, what present knowledge we have about that study, about that statement is also equally important. So, depending upon this, the hypothesis is made, which is a small simple word quantifiable statement, which is easily understandable to the person who is doing it and the person who is reading it. Thus, moving ahead, we are talking about types of hypothesis. Types of hypothesis means there are two different types onto which we can write, which we can find out as to what kind of statements we are supposed to make. First is called as a descriptive hypothesis. Descriptive hypothesis, which are nothing but they are based on past record. That means they are also based on literature, which we have just shown here. Descriptive hypothesis, which means they are based on the past records. Past record means till now it has been shown, it has been studied that 75 people who smoke, they suffer from cancer. So, this is one of the study which people are doing, could be because of the past records. Simple statement, easy to understand, and researcher makes some pre-assumptions about the variables used under study. Pre-assumptions means since it has some data, it has some chemical into it, or the cigarette is made up of some toxic chemical. So, this is a pre-assumption. We are assuming few things on our end only. We are not moving ahead, but we are assuming that this might be possible. So, these pre-assumptions are being made on the researcher's end. So, what happens is, for example, a student from the pure science background scores 90 to 95% if we talk about quantitative topics. Is simply a hypothesis. You cannot say a person who is from science background can only score 90 to 95%, but what they are saying, a student from pure science background scores 90 to 95% on a course on quantitative methods. But yes, the person from commerce can also score, but this is one hypothesis which is based on the past studies. Simple statement, and we are also pre-assuming it. This is a pre-assumptions being made. This is one of the assumptions which is being made, might not be true, might be true, depends upon what we are studying and how we are studying, from where we are taking the data. This is one kind of hypothesis. The other kind of hypothesis is relational hypothesis. In relational hypothesis, what we study is these are the types and the kinds, typical kind of hypothesis which states the expected relationship between two variables. Relational hypothesis is one which we are going to study ahead, but a small difference between your descriptive and your relational hypothesis is, descriptive is just a statement which is based on a past record. We are making a statement and we want to study that further, but Your relational hypothesis is one which gives you the relationship between the two variables of the population which we want to study further. So, there are two different kinds of relational hypothesis, one is directional and one is non-directional. The directional is called as a one-tailed, might be on to right side, might be on to left side. We can say them one-tailed, right hand tailed or left hand tail, and the other is called as a non-directional. Directional means it has direction, and whether it is going on to right side, whether it is going on to left side, whether it is going on to more side, whether it is going to less side. So, these all things we discuss in directional hypothesis. What happens is, if we are writing a statement, if we are writing a question, if we are writing a problem, if we want to study a problem, then if the terms such as positive, negative, more than, less than are used to make a statement, then the hypothesis is called as a directional hypothesis. If I say my data, the data onto which I am doing this study, that data is going towards the positive side, negative side, or more than, could be more than or could be less than, then this kind of data, this kind of study is called as a directional hypothesis, and it indicates the relationship between two or more population under study, and we respect with respect to the parameters onto which we are doing the study. This directional hypothesis is telling you about the relationship between two or more populations under study, because we are studying the two population. For example, taking the same example, smoke 1, if there are two population, this is population 1, this is population 2, these are smokers and these are non-smokers. So, the people who are suffering from cancer are smokers as compared to the people who are non-smokers. So, somehow or somewhere we have given this comparison, or we can say 96% people suffering from cancer are smokers and 4% are the people suffering from cancer, they are non-smokers. So, there is a comparison, there is a line, there is something negative, positive, more than, less than. So, this kind of hypothesis, this kind of study when we do and we give this statement is called as a directional hypothesis or one-tailed hypothesis. For example, higher the work exhaustion, see we have used the word higher here, higher the work exhaustion experienced by the BPO professionals, higher the turnover. If they are exerted more, then that means they will leave the company soon. So, higher the exhaustion level, higher is the turnover of the people working in the BPO company. So, we have used the word higher. In the same manner, there are the side effects of the particular medicines were experienced by less than 20% people. That means, what does this mean? This means that we have given 20%, we have given some direction to that, we have given less than. So, there is a direction to the statement. Side effect of a particular medicines were experienced by less than 20% of the people who took that medicine. So, this is giving you some direction towards which I am supposed to study. The other is non-directional. Non-direction means which direction you are supposed to follow, you do not know, but yes, we do this kind of studies as well, which indicates the relationship. This indicates the relationship, but it does not indicate which direction the relationship is going to. This does not indicate whether it is going on to more side, whether it is going to less side, whether it is higher, whether it is lower. So, the non-directional or a two-tailed test does not talks about what direction the relationship is on. In other words, there may be significant relationship between the two populations with respect to a parameter. Even then, nothing can be said whether the relationship would be positive or negative, more or less, we do not know. So, when this kind of relationship is established between the two populations, it is called as a non-directional or two-tailed test. When we talk about one-tailed test, we have a bell-shaped curve with only one direction, we can say, with only one side. Why it is tailed? Because it has two tails here. So, one-tailed means only one tail is being accepting, means giving us a result. this is the result which we want to accept, and the small part is being rejected onto one side of the bell shaped curve. Whereas, when we are talking about a two-tailed test, that means two-tailed ones is, this is a normal bell shaped curve where both the sides are giving us some result which is supposed to be either accepted or rejected. In the same manner, if we just draw, this is accepted or rejected, and this part is also accepted or rejected, and this part also in the same manner. If we are accepting this part, we will reject this part. If we are accepting this part, we will reject this part. So, depends upon as to what study you are doing, but yes, two-tailed or non-directional means we are, which direction we are supposed to follow, we do not know. So, for example, there is a relationship between quality of working life and job. They are saying there is a relationship, but they do not know whether it is towards positive side or towards negative side, whether the quality of work life is giving you a positive result on job or whether the quality of work life is giving you a negative impact on the job. We do not know, but yes, there is some relationship between quality of work life and job satisfaction experienced by the employees. In the same manner, if we talk about, there is a relationship between age and sick people, but yes, we do not know what age, whether higher age or whether lower age has impact on the sick people. The A factor age we are talking about. The difference between average pulse rate of men and women. We know there is a difference, there is a relationship, but yes, we do not know whether it is higher or whether it is lower. So, this is non-directional or two-tailed test. Now, hypothesis testing. What is hypothesis testing? Hypothesis testing is nothing but it begins with the pre-assumptions, as I have told you. It is a pre-assumption or a assumption or a statement. It is an assumption or a statement that may or may not be true, is called as a hypothesis. The hypothesis is tested on the basis of information that is obtained from the sample. We are supposed to make that hypothesis on the basis of information which we are getting from the population, from the sample which we have taken from the population. In the same manner, hypothesis is a study, that simply quantifiable study of the population, we have already told you. So, this study is done in two manners, or we can say this hypothesis has two different meanings. One is in ordinary context and one is in research context. When we talk about ordinary context, then it is just a superposition made by the researcher depending upon his reasonings. An ordinary context of hypothesis is you can say, we can elaborate on this or we can discuss this by just telling it is a superposition which is being made by the researcher depending upon the reasons which he is getting from the samples drawn out from the population. Whereas, when we talk about research context, what is hypothesis? Hypothesis is nothing but it is a formal question that we intended to solve, that we intended to answer. Here, we are talking about research context because we are doing research. So, in this context, when we are talking about research context, the hypothesis is nothing but it is a formal question. I want to ask. If I want to ask a question, how I want to get the answer, how I am intending it to solve that part of the question, how I am intending to solve that formal question is the research context of hypothesis. So, for example, a coin may be tossed 200 times, a coin you can toss it 200 times and get head 80 times and 120 times is tails. So, now my question says, we may now be interested in finding out whether this hypothesis, whether the hypothesis which we are doing, whether the coin was biased or unbiased. A new question. If I am tossing a coin 80 times, 200 times and I am getting out of 200 time, this 80 time I am getting it to be head. So, this time I will get a question as to whether this coin is biased or not, or whether this coin is unbiased or not. So, this is one question which I can get, which I can make hypothesis on. Second question, second example talks about, we may study the average weight of 100 students of a particular college and may get the result of 50 kg. We talk about 100 student weight and the average weight is 50 kg. But now we might be interested whether the sample drawn which we have drawn from the population is of 53 kgs or not, or 52 kgs or not. That is why we are getting it to be 50 kg. So, whenever we do some hypothesis, whenever we make some comment, whenever we state a problem, that includes few questions which we are talking about here. in research context. It is a formal question which we are trying to just solve. In these two examples, what we got is, if I have studied 100 students and the average weight is 50, now my question says, कहीं ऐसा तो नहीं जो मैंने स्टूडेंट्स उठाए, जो मैंने सैम्पल्स उठाए, उनमें से मैक्सिमम का वेट वॉज 53 kgs or 49 kgs, now I am getting it to be 50 kgs. So this kind of questions when you get in your head, when the researcher get these kind of questions, in order to solve those questions we are doing the hypothesis. Now what happens is, what is the procedure of doing this kind of hypothesis, procedure of how to follow, how to go further. You are supposed to define the facts that are relevant and which are not relevant. You are supposed to give a direction to your study or investigation. You are supposed to suggest from which research, what research design you want to follow, which is appropriate for your study. Now you are supposed to give a framework to that study, the organizing and the conclusion of the finding. You are supposed to give a framework to it. You are supposed to limit your study to a specific area. You cannot go, you cannot spread yourself in all the areas. So you are supposed to limit your study into a specific area, and you are supposed to offer the explanation as to what relationship, if you are taking some variables, what relationship you want to establish. You are supposed to explain that to the people or to yourself as to why you are doing it. Now the procedure of doing, this was how, this was why we were doing it, and this is the procedure as to, first of all, you are supposed to set up a hypothesis, whether you want to go for a null hypothesis or alternative hypothesis. We will be studying these things in the next further slides. This is a procedure of testing hypothesis, and the way we are supposed to follow, the way we are supposed to go one by one, follow the step one by one in order to get the final result of the research, in order to get a reliable data, in order to get a reliable answer to the questions which we have just made. That is all from my side. Thank you so much.